Okay. All right.
All right, everybody, welcome in. We've got a Monday night show for you. So as you can see, obviously it is not Wednesday 7, it is Monday because this week is Christmas and, we did not fit doing the show on Christmas Eve. Everybody's traveling. Boss Man is already at our parents' house, hence the new background. I'll be joining him there tomorrow, so we'll be flying out that way to spend the holidays together. Hope you all are doing well and have a Merry Christmas ahead of you. Happy holidays. Shout out to our friend Rick, who is joined in Monday night. Rick, thank you for joining. We're happy to do it. Of course, we had to talk about what we saw this past weekend, including this. Rick, again, thank you for your sympathies. Feeling bad for us. We felt bad for ourselves watching that game. So we'll be sure to get into the opening round college football playoff action, as well as some thoughts on the round 2 matchups. And I think that's pretty much it. So it should be a pretty cut and dry show tonight. We don't have a guest. We're just coming to you on a Monday to get some thoughts out there, and then everybody can go enjoy their Christmas and holiday time. Boss Man, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. I can't complain. I'm happy to be home. It was a long travel day. Good to be back in Virginia here. But excited to talk some ball. Not so excited to talk about the A&M game, but I was there. I think I said it on last week's show. I was there. I didn't have some time to put together a little montage of some pictures and such that I had some videos. Not many videos or pictures were taken after the first or second quarter. Because it wasn't going so well for the Aggies. We were in the game the whole time, but just an abysmal performance on offense, which we'll get into. But good to be here. Christmas week. Things are good. Many things to be thankful for. So looking forward to talking some ball and a lot to look forward to in round 2 of the college football playoff.
Definitely. Well, we can hop right into it. But before we do, obviously, sign up below for the newsletter. If you haven't, that goes out Mondays and Fridays, soon to be just on Wednesday. We'll talk more about that, when the off season actually arrives. But for now, still Monday morning, Wednesday, Friday morning, or afternoon, depending on when we get to it. But Mondays and Fridays, it's out. It's free, and we just keep you up to date with all the latest going on in the SEC and around the country. We're brought to you tonight, of course, by our friends at the Steer Agency. So shout out to those guys for supporting the show. But yeah, I think we hop right into it. So I feel like we can save the A&M Miami stuff maybe for last. We'll kind of do what we did with our friend Garrett from the 3 Technique Pod, where we'll do a bit of a sandwich here. We'll start with a good game. We'll talk G5 matchups, and then we'll end with the A&M Miami one, because it's probably what we'll have the most to say about, although we already had like a hour and a half debrief call on Sunday afternoon discussing the game. But anyway,
Rehash it. Yeah,
exactly. So obviously, yeah, we could start in Norman. Alabama, gutsy, incredible comeback win. Things did not start out well for them, getting down in that 17-0 hole, but ultimately pull it out 34-24 on the road. The atmosphere in Norman was awesome. 50 Cent was there for some reason. I don't know if there's any connection to Oklahoma that he has. That would be the first I've heard of it, but he was there. So Alabama just stood up to the test after being embarrassed in the SEC title, and people saying they don't belong in, they shouldn't be here. Mostly Notre Dame fans, but just saying that Alabama shouldn't be in there, and then they go on the road and get a 10-point win in a hostile environment against a really good team that had already beat them earlier in the year. So big win for them. What were your takeaways from this game?
There were many men in Norman, Oklahoma on Friday night, but the many men ended up being on the Alabama sideline and not on Oklahoma's sideline. Oklahoma had 50 Cent, but his song Many Men is what he was singing when he walked out, which is a fantastic song. That's a great gym song, pump up song, all that. Wild to have him in Norman. But I mean, we were talking about this during the game, like texting back and forth. I was leaving Alabama for dead, 17-0. Oklahoma got them earlier in the year. Oklahoma 2-0 against Alabama since joining the SEC. And you go down 17-0 in Norman in that environment. It's night. The crowd was going crazy. They had the light show going in, the schooners going all over. There's fireworks, everything. The whole thing, laser light show. I mean,
yeah,
the atmosphere in Norman, folks down there did a great job, with really pumping it up for that college football playoff game. And so, yeah, you go down 17-0 pretty early, and it's like, why would you have much faith in Alabama? And I think you texted, why did I pick Alabama? And I said, I don't know. Like, why did you pick Alabama? Like, I picked Oklahoma, and it looked really good. And I actually had a friend of mine, an Oklahoma Sooner. He texted, shot me a DM on Instagram and just said, I don't want to speak too soon, but this looks awesome. And then he texted me a little bit later and said, I spoke too soon. I said, yeah, I sure did. So I just, you got to give credit to Alabama, like the resiliency of this team. I mean, most people would have folded up and just curled up in a ball and said, well, good season, guys. Oh, well, 17-0. They got us on the ropes, and the season just didn't end as we wanted to. And I texted a couple friends during the game in the first half when it was 17-0 and just said, Michigan coach, Kalen DeBoer. And even if Oklahoma had won that game, I don't think that was true, but I was just joking around. But I was really impressed with the comeback, the way Ty Simpson played. I don't blame you, Rick. I quit watching.
Well, shout out to Bonnie for getting you back in there. 17-7.
There you go. Hey, we got life, right? We got life. And Alabama clawed right back in it. And to score 34 points after the offensive showings that they've had in recent weeks against that Oklahoma defense, which is salty, all the credit in the world to them. I didn't, get a chance to really take a deep dive into the stats just because of travel to and from Kyle Field and travel now up to Virginia. But congratulations to the Tide. And we were talking about this before with last week with Garrett from 3 Tech, which, he was saying, hey, if John Mateer can get hot, if Oklahoma can get hot, like there's this side of the bracket because, you got Indiana, and no offense to Indiana, right? Indiana is just not a traditional power. So if you're looking at the bracket, you're kind of like, okay, I'd rather play Indiana or maybe Texas Tech than I would a traditional power like an Ohio State. And so we were saying that for Oklahoma. Maybe if Oklahoma can get hot, they can make a run. Well, looking at this Alabama team now, the way they played going into Norman, getting that win, you kind of got to flip that script of what we were talking about last week and say, hey, maybe Alabama can do this. Maybe Alabama can make a little run here. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it will. I mean, it's funny because I did pick Alabama, and I stuck with the pick because that's what I put on our pick sheet, and that's what I had talked about. But even after talking with Garrett last week, I was like, man, I'm second guessing my pick. And then even on SEC After Dark, I think I was like, I'm picking Alabama, but I don't really have a strong feel for it other than, the game in Tuscaloosa was largely controlled by Alabama. They just made the mistakes and lost the turnover battle. And my weird, meme brain was telling me that Jesse Pinkman, like, in terms of Oklahoma, like they can't keep getting away with this. And my thought on that was, basically just like they can't keep getting defensive touchdowns and dominating special teams the way that they are. But, again, I was very much second guessing that going into the game. Obviously, when it was 17-0, I was like, I'm an idiot. But it's funny because Alabama, as our friend Mike just pointed out, DeBoer and Grubb did a great job play calling, and they just didn't panic. And they did flip the script because you take a step back and look, how this game was won. Oddly enough, Oklahoma outgained Alabama in this game. Not nearly as significant as the first game, but they did outgain them. And it flipped on special teams and the pick six. So Alabama, instead of Oklahoma, is the one that gets a defensive score. And then special teams, which has been one of Oklahoma's calling cards this year, was a disaster. I mean, they had the fumbled punt, which was one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen, with the kid just dropping the ball, which set Alabama up for a field goal. So Alabama had just come down and scored to make it 17-7. And then Oklahoma's ensuing possession, they're punting, and he just drops the ball, which gives Alabama a field goal. They don't convert it to a touchdown, but a field goal. So you're sitting at 17-10, and then next possession, pick six. So boom, 17 all going into the half. And then to make matters worse for Oklahoma, the touchdown that Bama scored really to seal the game. I'm going to have to pull this up because I might be missing my second half touchdowns. But, it was that punt. It was like a 20-yard punt. He just completely – I know the wind was swirling, but, he punted it. Looked like a middle school punt. And Alabama got the ball on the Oklahoma's 35 and promptly went down and scored. So it really was Oklahoma special teams killed them. Alabama's defense came up big when they needed to. And, that just was the story of the game. And then, so it was Alabama's final touchdown. So Oklahoma had just scored, made it 27-24. Forced Bama to punt. Bama punts, pins them deep. Oklahoma is then forced to punt, and it's like a 20-yard punt, and Bama gets the ball in the 35, and they go right down and score thanks to Daniel Hill, who ran the ball pretty well for Alabama, down the stretch in the second half there. But yeah, and look, I obviously too the missed field goals from Sandell were strange, but I don't think Oklahoma was scoring 10 points there. So those field goals, to me, maybe he hits the first one. Obviously they have a chance, but the second one was very much a prayer. Still strange to see him miss. He hadn't missed since the opening game. But again, it's one of those things like they can't keep getting away with this. Like, this stuff doesn't happen. No college kicker goes perfect through, 11 games in a row, and it all caught up to them at the worst possible time. And, they lost. And I think we can get into this too. This will be a similar theme, I feel like, when we talk about A&M, but it's like all these teams outside of possibly Indiana and maybe Ohio State, since the only loss was to Indiana, but they have all shown flaws. Georgia included has shown flaws. And it came back to bite them in this game, right? With Oklahoma, hey, we knew for them to win, your defense has to be really freaking good to the point of not just holding the opponent down, but turning them over. They didn't do that in this game. And you need your special teams to be really stinking good. And it was terrible, and you lose. Alabama's got plenty of flaws too, as they've shown. But, those things came back to bite Oklahoma in this one, again, at the worst possible time.
Yeah, you brought up the field goals, the mishaps for Oklahoma, and I don't remember how many Talty hit. How many did Talty hit in the game? 2?
Yeah, he hit 2.
Alabama 2.
Yeah,
he hit 2. So, in the pregame, the pre-show when we did with SEC After Dark, that was one of the things I mentioned. Is if this game comes down to special teams, particularly the field goal game, Alabama has one of the worst field goal percentages. I think Talty was 13 of 22 or something, or 21 on the season. It was 65%. Whereas Oklahoma has one of the better kicking games of the SEC. So you don't want this to come down to field goals if you're Alabama. If this one's tight at the end, and I have to go with a field goal kicker, I'm going with Oklahoma. Wind, whatever, and I know the wind could be a factor, but if I got to pick, I'm going with Oklahoma. And sure enough, college football, man, it's tough to predict. And Alabama's the one that ends up having, 2 for 2 for Tulsi, as far as I remember, and Oklahoma's the one that has issues in the kicking game. So what do you know? Good for Alabama, good win for them, and things are looking up again. And Kalen DeBoer not going to be the Michigan coach.
No, he's not. And Rick brings up a good point here of the Alabama defense changing things up, going a little man to man, and then I would say the same on the offensive side that Mike brought up earlier with DeBoer and Grubb. They started running a little tempo. That first touchdown that Bama had in the second half, in the third quarter, that was the long pass to Brooks, which was the touchdown play. They ran tempo, and I think it's just a little thing you do, right, to mix things up, especially against a good defense that gets them a little bit off balance, because up until really this game, the Oklahoma defense had Bama's number going back to last season. So just little tweaks like that made the difference here. And again, when it comes back to Oklahoma, it's just they needed the defense and special teams to perform better. And the offense, I thought, played pretty well. Again, they outgained Bama, but it was all it was all on Mateer and those receivers, and that's just not a winning recipe. I mean, Oklahoma finished with 50 yards rushing, 55 yards rushing. So they just got nothing on the ground, which has been a theme all year. And so we're going to start seeing a lot of this, as we did, again, as we saw in the A&M Miami game, where, hey man, this is the playoffs now. Your flaws, you either have to somehow overcome them, or they're going to be the thing that ends up sinking your ship. And I think for Oklahoma, that's kind of what we saw.
It feels like everything in the playoff, we know this, but just to reiterate, it's like everything in the playoffs becomes magnified. And so your stars, they get magnified if they step up, or if they don't, the flaws of the stars or the flaws of your team get magnified. And we saw that especially in the A&M game, which we'll get into in a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And last thing I'll say on this game, he just deserves a shout out, but Latsier Brooks, true freshman. I mean, he's played, 13 games now, so he's hardly a freshman, but what a game. 5 catches, 79 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had the big third down conversion on Bama's first scoring drive, where it's like, are they ever going to get a first down? We're midway through the second quarter. They don't have a first down, and it's, third and medium, and they go to Brooks. He catches it. They move the sticks and ultimately cash it in. So what a game from him. And that's huge, because I'm not going to, he's getting enough flack online that he doesn't need to take it here, but Ryan Williams is kind of nowhere to be found. So they needed somebody to step up, and Brooks appears to be that guy. So good for him. Big win for Alabama. And I saw this week, Kalen DeBoer, when they're talking about the next round, he's like, hey, I think we're getting healthy. We're healthier than we have been in a long time. It seems like they expect LT Overton to possibly be back. So again, you said the bracket kind of sets up. I mean, you're playing the number 1 seed, so good luck. But
yeah,
we'll see. Who's to say they can't get it done? And we'll touch on that game later as well. So let's move on. We can start with Ole Miss Tulane here. How about? So again, we probably will not spend as much time on these games. This game, score-wise, darn near exactly what it was when these teams played in September. It's 45-10 with Lane Kiffin at the helm. It's 41-10 in the playoffs with Golding. Similar to Norman, I did just want to give a shout out to Oxford and Ole Miss. I mean, what a scene. That was awesome. The flyover, the super slow flyover was awesome. Great. And they're obviously, as they should be, rallied behind Pete Golding and this team and the staff. And that was just fun to see. That was a great scene, and they got the job done. Any big takeaways from this game?
So we talked about this in the show going into it, right? Pre-game show leading into this game, that we talked a lot about this on SEC After Dark. Ole Miss wants to come out and make a statement. All the Lane Kiffin drama, all the turmoil and craziness that has surrounded this program for the last month of the season, really, Lane's out, Pete Golding's in, got some of the coaches back, etc. So was that going to affect this team going into this game? Like, were we going to see like a sluggish start? Were we going to see Tulane hang around? Was Ole Miss going to be able to cover this spread? Was this going to look more like a 35-24 win for Ole Miss? Who knows? We'll see. Tulane also playing the conference championship game might be a little bit more in rhythm than Ole Miss, who hasn't played in 3 weeks, a month, whatever it is. So were we going to see Ole Miss cold? Were we going to see Tulane that was a little bit more ready to go? What were we going to see? And Ole Miss, in general, obviously what they wanted to do was come out and make a statement like, hey, Lane Kiffin stuff is in the past for us. Pete Golding's our guy. We're totally behind him, and this team is ready to go. The coaches have us ready to go. Play calling's in sync. Trinidad Chambliss looks good, et cetera. And that's what you got. I mean, 41-10, that's a statement, right? We're rolling. We're still playing well. We're still Ole Miss. You're still going to have to deal with us. And the defense did what they had to do, hold them to 10 points, just like you did earlier in the season. And Ole Miss's offense is rolling like nothing ever happened. So get a good win, 41-10. Move on. I mean, that's pretty much as simple as that for me. You just look at the score. I didn't get a chance to watch this game in depth. Saw a little bit of it because I was traveling from College Station to go to a Christmas party for a friend in Houston. But just kept checking in on the score and just like, okay, Ole Miss is rolling. They're making a statement, and we'll see if that carries over now into the next round. But for now, looks like Ole Miss is a real threat.
Yeah. And to just touch on what Mike's saying here, like I would say yes, not to downplay what they just did, but this sort of set up perfectly for Ole Miss to do exactly what you said, and that is make a statement, because Tulane was not much of a challenge, and they'd already played them, so they knew exactly what they were getting into. They were familiar with that team, that staff, what Tulane was going to try to do, and they had all the answers. When you think about the next round game, before we, actually break down Georgia Ole Miss Part 2, I did just want to touch on some of the stats from that game. And that is, Tulane moved the ball pretty well. They had over 400 yards of offense. They just went 0-4 on fourth down. So not surprising that they are going all in and are going to try to convert these fourth downs. They know they're the underdog. They're not going to win by kicking field goals, and Summerall's aggressive. So they moved the ball pretty well, just couldn't really convert. But at the same time, when we can kind of touch on this in the Oregon JMU game, it's like, man, how much of that is somewhat garbage time? Just Ole Miss knows they got it in the bag, and Tulane's kind of moving the ball. So I'm with you. The offense looked great. I mean, Trinidad Chambliss, 23 of 29 for 282 yards, 3 total touchdowns. He had 2 on the ground, 1 through the air. He looked great. The offense looks good. I think, Kawan Lacey seems to be fine, although he did go out, left the game with an injury, but I think everything should be fine there. So good win for Ole Miss. Happy for that, fan base that they got to host a playoff game and win emphatically and move on to the quarterfinals. Similarly, in Eugene, we saw Oregon handle business against James Madison. Our friend Mike, I think you and Mike were the only guys on James Madison. And Mike, of course, is calling it out here. Never in doubt. The backdoor cover from JMU with 28 second half points from the Dukes. So again, credit to the Dukes. They didn't give up. They kept swinging and ultimately did. They had 500 yards of offense in this game, which is kind of crazy. But I think, again, mostly garbage time. I don't know if Oregon completely emptied the benches, but this obviously was over pretty quickly. It was 34-6 at the half. So this was never really in doubt. Oregon was definitely a class above James Madison. Any takeaways from this game?
Go Dukes, baby. Backdoor cover. Got this helmet here. Our little brother, Cade, Chuck Biscuit, as we call him on this show. He is a JMU grad. So he was all over me and Garrett, Garrett Turney, our guest picker last week from Three Tech Pod, for going against the Dukes, having no faith in the Dukes. I had faith in them, if I remember correctly. Mike is telling me. Mike is telling me that I picked JMU. I can't remember, but
I think you had them to cover. I think you said the spread was too big.
There you go. So I've been saying that all year. I've gotten Mike on that train with me. Pick against the big spreads. Like, that's just college football. Pick against the big spread. More often than not, you're going to be right. And so, yeah, I didn't have any faith in JMU to win this game, especially as we talked about last week with Garrett. Like, the cross-country travel for Bob Chesney, the head coach at JMU, taking the UCLA job. He's going like this across the country. JMU has to travel from Harrisonburg, Virginia. It's like 2,800 miles or something absurd to get all the way to Eugene, Oregon. Like, that alone was going to be tough for anybody, let alone a JMU team who just doesn't have the talent, profile of a team like Oregon. So this one played out similar to how I figured. I mean, the Ducks score 51 points. Like you said, it was over pretty early. Did not expect JMU to score that much in the second half. I thought JMU would maybe kind of get 7 here, 14 here. I thought they'd be able to score a little bit against Oregon, but I didn't think they'd score 34 points. I didn't think they'd score 28 in the second half. I did think they would cover, and they get the backdoor cover, but otherwise mostly went as you expect. Ducks get a big win. Ducks move on to the second round and kind of had a warm-up game in round one.
Yeah, they did. The only other thing I have on this game, again, just kind of worth noting, Dante Moore threw 2 interceptions, so something to keep an eye on. He's been great this year, and not that this is an indictment on him, but you would hope he would not do that against a Sun Belt team, especially going up against Texas Tech next week, which has a really, really, really darn good defense. So, yeah, not surprising there. Good for JMU getting the cover and getting to the college football playoff. That's it's a big deal for the Dukes, who were FCS not 5 years ago. I mean, they've not been FBS for very long, and they already made the college football playoff. So good for them. All right. Well, we can go now. We can get into our unfortunate game as Aggies. Hopefully y'all watching the show know this, but both of us graduated from A&M. So this one really, really hurt. 10-3, just a defensive slugfest. I think I was seeing a lot of the stuff online, of course, like, these teams are terrible and whatever. I think definitely the low score has something to do with the offenses, not playing well. The wind was obviously a factor in this one too, but the more I watched this game, I do think it was mostly due to the defenses just playing really, really well. But yeah, I mean, this was just a tough one. What are your thoughts? I'll kind of let you take it where you want from here.
We could pull at a ton of different threads from this game, because despite the score being 10-3, there was a lot of crazy takeaways and a lot of different ways that you could go. As we led the show with, we talked about this last week, I was at the game, got tickets. I was about 20 rows up on the 30-yard line over on the student section side. So I was just to the side of the student section where there's some season ticket holders. And the first thing I'll say is that the elements were an issue. Like, if you were watching the broadcast, I'm sure they were talking about the wind and everything like that. But being in the stadium, the wind was crazy. It's some of the craziest wind I've ever experienced in a stadium, let alone Kyle Field. Like, Kyle Field can get windy, but it was swirling. If it was like Soldier Field in Chicago. I mean, the flags on the top of the stadium were going different ways the whole game. The flags on top of the field goal were going crazy on both ends of the stadium all game. So that was the first thing, was that even though it was just overcast for the first half, and then, the sun started shining a bit in the second half, that was a bit deceiving because the wind was nuts all day. So I think not only did that affect the kicking game, obviously for Miami, who misses 3 field goals. A&M, it wasn't really an issue, although it was an issue in the punting game.
Yeah.
The wind was driving the ball down. And so, I mean, the Aggie, you had a choice, basically. You could either punt and try to get some hang time and get your gunners to go downfield, but the wind was probably going to, deflate your ball instead of it being a 40, 50, 60-yard punt. If you punted it in the air, it was going to be a 30, 40-yard punt if you were lucky. Or you could drive a line drive, and you can drive it to Casey Concepcion for the Aggies, or you can drive it, basically like a long pass to a Malachi Toney, which did end up biting the Aggies when he had a whatever it was, 50-yard return that almost went for 6, if not for a shoestring tackle.
I was going to say, you probably haven't seen the replay of that because you were in the building, so you got to see it live. But when they showed that on replay, I don't know how Ratliff got to his leg and just tripped him up, because that dude was gone. I mean, that was a heck of a play by Ratliff, but like A&M got lucky.
Very lucky on that one. And then I believe they didn't get any points out of that, because that was one of the missed field goals. A&M's defense holds, right? So like the A&M defense, despite, I know that Miami, I think they had about 150 yards on the ground, if not 150 at the end of the day.
175.
175. Gosh. Okay. So it was a lot more. But they really started to lean on A&M in the second half. And that's when those holes started to open up. There was a couple in the first half. Mostly it was in the second half. So 175 yards on the ground isn't great, but A&M gives up 10 points. 10 points. And if those field goals go in, you really only gave up like 16, 19 points, depending on how many of them go in. So the A&M defense played at a championship level all day. And I was saying that to the guys around me, like, our defense is playing unbelievable. Miami's defense is playing very well too. Like, that defensive line, for the smoke that A&M talked, Trey Zune, the now infamous quote of him talking about Ruben Bain, we're not worried about that guy. Trey Zune actually played very well. Watch the tape. Trey Zune was not the problem. He was not when Ruben Bain was getting sacks. Messidor and Ruben Bain, though, together were creating havoc all day long. And I think that Miami ended up with 7 sacks. I think Messidor had a couple. I know Bain had 2. He had 3.
Yeah, Bain had 3. They had 7 sacks as a team. Messidor had 1.5. Yeah. Bain had 3, and Keontae Scott had 2. So the defensive back had 2.
Yeah, they started bringing the backs. Yeah. The Miami defensive line is really dadgum good. Like, they are scary good. And the A&M offensive line just did not have a good day for the most part. And not only did they get the sacks and get home and all of that, but they really affected Marcel Reed almost the entire day. And if they weren't getting home, they were speeding up his clock. And so if you don't have an offensive line that is able to hold up, and at least give you a little bit of time in the pocket, which he had almost no time in the pocket all day, your clock as a quarterback starts to speed up, even if you do have a little bit of time. And that was what was happening, it felt like, to Marcel Reed almost all day. And so that was really a frustrating piece as an Aggie, to watch. The other thing I think that is interesting about this one, Rick, you brought up Ryan Grubb and DeBoer and how they called a heck of a game for Alabama. They never got rattled. They were really poised, and they just, methodically just kind of chipped away. They started trying different things. They went tempo, et cetera. One of my takeaways from this is that if you have an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator, whoever it is, it's a weird time in college football where if you make the college football playoff, these guys might be taking new jobs, right? I think that Colin Klein taking the Kansas State job was a problem, to be honest with you. If I had to do this over again, if I'm Mike Elko, I say thank you, Colin Klein, for everything you did. You got us to 11-1 in the regular season. And now go have fun at Kansas State. We're going to promote somebody, either it's Holman Wiggins. Someone else is going to handle this, because you can't handle both. The A&M offense, the play calling for most of there were some plays that were open that were just missed. Marcel missed a lot of throws. He was throwing behind guys on screens all day long. If Marcel didn't miss, he's throwing it to Borkesher, and Borkesher's dropping the ball. There was tons of stuff going on where Klein did make some good calls where it just didn't hit. But overall, I felt like the game plan was completely disjointed. Nothing new was ever tried to change it up and mix things up and give Miami a different look than maybe they'd seen on tape. I mean, I saw so many jet motion sweeps, whether it was a fake or, pullback or an actual one. I mean, teams have seen that all year from A&M. At some point, it doesn't really fool anybody, and it wasn't fooling Miami all day long. So between Marcel's issues, Colin Klein calling an okay game, I felt like after the first half, watching the offense and how badly they performed, I did not feel like that team was ready. And I didn't feel like that the game plan and the play calling and the execution was there at all. I'll give you an example. There was a play, if you go back and watch it. In fact, Kellen Mond tweeted this out, and I think I sent it to you as well. He was just like, what was the play design here? What was this play call? Like, I don't understand what was happening here. And it was the fumble play where Marcel Reed goes to the boundary and he just like tries to like toss it to a tight end to nobody. And Miami, strips the ball basically before his arm is going forward, and it ends up being a fumble. Miami recovers. If you watch that replay, but it was supposed to be a read option, and Le'Veon Moss was supposed to be diving down, and there was supposed to be a key, and then Marcel Reed was supposed to figure out, which way to go, whether or not he wanted to give it to Le'Veon Moss or whether he wanted to run with it himself. Le'Veon Moss went the wrong way. And then the play was completely blown up after that. And Marcel makes a bad decision. And instead of just throwing it away or going down, he fumbles the ball and it's a turnover. I don't know if that's a product of Le'Veon Moss being out for so long or what, but to me, that's an offensive, that's on you as an offensive play caller. Like, how does Le'Veon Moss go the wrong way on that play? Like, you've had weeks to prepare for this. Like, how is that possible? There were two offensive false starts at home that killed drives, like momentum killing false start penalties that took you from like 3rd and 4 to like 3rd and 12 or 3rd and 14. They came off of a timeout on a 4th and 4 or 4th and 5 that they were going to go for, and you get a false start off of a timeout at home.
Yeah.
It just didn't look prepared. So anyway, that's my long spiel on it. What were your takeaways? What were some of the things I missed?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's totally fair. Because I love Colin Klein. I thought he had a great season. I thought he was good for the most part, last year, and obviously I'm happy for him. He's going back to his alma mater to take the head coaching job. That's amazing. So this is not shade, but as our friend Mike points out, you really can't do two jobs at once. And even Andy's pointing out here that, Hartline's leaving, and I saw today Hartline's still there, took the USF job, but he's still on staff at Ohio State. Well, Ryan Day said, I'm going to call the plays because he knows that.
Good for him. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, hey man, great. We love you. You can stick around. We want you here. You're part of the team, but you can't do two things at once. So I think there's definitely some of that. I agree. I think, it felt like, given we had 3 weeks to prepare, that was an interesting game plan. To defend Klein here, it's really hard to have a good game plan when you can't block. And the A&M offensive line got worked.
Yeah,
3 tackles for loss and 7 sacks. That's tough. Another thing is look, it's hard when we talked about this, but Marcel just has to be better, because when plays were there, he did have time. He's got happy feet. He's not setting his feet.
Correct.
The first interception that he threw over the middle, that was the right play. The guy was open. He throws it 4 feet high and 4 yards behind him. So that's obviously not on Klein. The fumble, I'm with you. That speaks to just being disjointed and unprepared. But again, a wise quarterback in that scenario goes, this play is busted. I'm either getting down or I'm running north and south to try and get, as close to the line of scrimmage as I can, not whatever he tried to do, which
that was
a complete panic move and resulted in a turnover. So I think a lot of that, it's a combination. It doesn't just fall all on Reed. It doesn't fall all on Klein, doesn't fall all on the offensive line, but just a combination of things happened at A&M, obviously, wasn't able to recover from it. You brought up the run game. A&M did not run the ball well. However, I don't know if it was Moss going down again and going out into the locker room, but I thought we kind of abandoned the run game too quickly because it wasn't very effective. But I'm just looking at the box score now. Marcel Reed threw the ball 40 times, which I don't think is ever really our recipe to win. No. We ran the ball 35 times. 15 of those came from Marcel, 7 of which were sacks. So running backs only had, Ruben had 7, Le'Veon had 7, EJ had 4, and KC had 2 on the jet sweep. So we didn't really, try too hard to run. And it may not have worked because Miami was dominating the Aggies up front, but it was a 3-3 ball game until there was 2 minutes left. So it's not like you had anything to lose. You weren't in a scenario where you had to pass. So it's kind of what I thought, but just in general, yeah. I mean, you look at the statistics from this game, and it's obvious why A&M lost. Miami outrushed them 175-89. Now, granted, 56 of those, came on that final drive, so it was a big chunk play from Mark Fletcher. But Fletcher had a great day on the ground. A&M got caught, running stunts and doing stuff up front, and they got a few times with just those dives up the middle. Where a gap would get evacuated by an A&M D lineman on a stunt, and that's where Miami would hit it. So credit to the Hurricanes and Shannon Dawson for, winning the chess match there. And then you lose the turnover battle, 3-1. Obviously A&M had the fumble that didn't turn into anything because the offense was inept, but A&M turned the ball over 3 times, obviously, including the one at the end of the game where you're on the doorstep about ready to tie the game. And we were talking afterward, you and I offline, just like after that game, thinking when he scored, when Malachi Tony scored, I thought, okay, like I'm glad he scored because, and I don't blame him. I know there's the debate. Oh, do you go down, say for 3? Given the Miami guy had missed 3 field goals, it's windy. I don't fault the guy for taking the point. But when he did that and A&M didn't have any timeouts left, I was like, okay, well, now we have a chance at least. And I thought, hey, man, we've been here before, and I felt pretty good about it. And, of course, we drive right down there. But then, the field shrinks. And given the day that Marcel had, I wasn't surprised that it ended that way. And as we talked about, this isn't first and goal or whatever, goal to goal from the 5 in the second quarter. This is 30 seconds left, your season on the line. You got to throw the ball. So he was late. It was a bad decision, but you have to throw it. Again, maybe some more creativity from Klein would have been helpful down there, but you can't, in a game that you lose 10-3, you can't turn the ball over 3 times, one of which being from your opponent's 5-yard line, and expect to win. So I think at the end of the day, tip your hat to Miami. That defense, they came to play. And I thought Miami, too, on offense, like they didn't have a good, A&M outgained them. They had a worse day, statistically speaking, but I would give them credit for sticking with the run game and just sticking with their plan. I mean, Carson Beck threw the ball 20 times. I think they knew, hey, it's windy, and this guy is turnover prone, just like A&M's quarterback was. But A&M's quarterback threw the ball 40 times. Miami threw it 20. They knew, like, this is what we have to do. We're going to stick to it. And it didn't work until there was 2 minutes left in the game, and then it worked. So I give those guys credit for, sticking to their game plan, being the more physical team at the point of attack, and A&M just, kind of being unprepared, making bad mistakes at the worst time. And similar to what I said about Oklahoma, it's like, hey, man, these flaws, because A&M was not a perfect team all season, they came back to bite him. Marcel had been turnover prone, especially down the stretch. Well, he turns the ball over 3 times. A&M special teams had not been good all season. They weren't good in this game. So at the end of the day, you go up against teams in the college football playoff that are really good, and it's hard to win those games. And Miami, made a couple plays that they needed to make at the right time and got the win.
Well, let's be clear about this. In my opinion, A&M completely beat themselves in this game. They had the talent to beat them. You match up very well with Miami in terms of talent. You probably are the more talented team. You're at home. The environment was insane. I mean, Kyle Field, even for an 11 a.m. game, was going nuts. I mean, the atmosphere was incredible, especially when the Aggies were on defense. So you have the 12th man behind you. You have all of these things in your favor, and you have stupid penalties. We only had four. The Aggies only had 4 penalties for 15 yards, but those penalties were at critical junctures, like I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, false starts on 3rd and short.
False start on 4th down off a timeout. False start on 3rd down that kills your drive basically twice. You killed 2 drives off that. You try to execute a fake punt from the 50 that doesn't come back to bite you, but it's completely poorly executed. The punter throws it out of bounds over the guy's head who was open. It was just one thing after the other that the Aggies continually shot themselves in the foot, which has been the story of A&M football for a very long time. But A&M, it had been a long time. I mean, before the Texas game, I think they'd hit 30 points in every single game up until Texas.
Yes.
And you lose
Correct.
to 17 points against Texas, and then you score 3 against Miami. Like, you beat yourself. 3 turnovers. And I'll reiterate it. I said this before the game. I said this on our show and on SEC After Dark. The one thing that worries me about this game is turnovers.
Yeah.
A&M does not turn teams over. They're one of the worst in the SEC in terms of turnover margin, while Miami is one of the best in the ACC in terms of turnover margin because their defense gets turnovers. And while Carson Beck is turnover prone, he threw 10 picks on the year, they're still plus, right? They're top 3 in the ACC in turnover margin. So Marcel has not been playing well. He's been turning the ball over. Like, that worries the heck out of me. Well, what happened? 3 bad turnovers from Marcel, one that ends the game in the end zone when you have a chance to go down and beat them. And I mean, you could just go down the list of mistakes. It was just over and over and over again. The KC Concepcion, there's no one within 10 yards of him on either side on that last drive, and Marcel throws it short, and KC can't catch it. Like, the other one, the last one I'll talk about here very quickly is the special teams from top to bottom for A&M was terrible, just abysmal. Like, I don't know what the special teams coach for A&M should be worried about his job. And I don't think he's going to get fired because he's an Elko guy, was at Duke. He's a respected coach. So maybe they're going to fix it in the portal or whatever. The punting game was terrible all day. They were just punting line drives to Malachi Toney. He had green grass in front of him every single time that they punted the ball to him, which ended up in that 60-yard or whatever return that almost went for a touchdown. At some point, it was going to happen because they kept kicking it to him like that. You can't kick a field goal. Zirkle kicks it straight into the line from 23 yards out, because he
hit the ground first.
So your punting game is terrible. Your kicking game is terrible. And then not only that, but your reliable punt returners who have been good all season long. That's been like the one bright spot of A&M special teams has been the kick return game with KC Concepcion and then a little bit of Terry Bussey in there. Why aren't they calling for fair catches? KC Concepcion about gets his head taken off because he doesn't call for a fair catch, and the Miami guy just runs straight into his chin. That happened multiple times. There was a bobble on one of the punt returns where we were like, my God, we're going to fumble this inside the 10.
Yeah.
So the special teams from top to bottom was just an absolute joke for A&M, which is something that A&M has hung their hat on for many, many years. I mean, the punting game for A&M has been a weapon. The kicking game for A&M has been a weapon. The punt return game has been a weapon. Like, usually the Aggies are very good on special teams, and they were absolutely atrocious for most of the year, aside from the kick return game and the punt return game. And it really showed, as we said earlier, the issues for teams can be magnified in the college football playoff. They were absolutely magnified for the Aggies in this game. And the narrative of, well, A&M they played the bottom tier of the SEC. This was a fraud team. We were pushing back on that, for weeks. Like, come on, they're 11-1, right? They played like one bad half football against South Carolina. They played, a bad game against Texas, but they're 11-1 in the SEC. to be honest with you, even as an Aggie, that narrative kind of came true against Miami. So,
yeah, I mean, to hammer this point home, to close it out, and this can honestly take us into our next segment where we'll talk about the next second round matchups. But A&M coming into this game, turnover margin 119th in the country. They were -9, meaning they had committed 9 more turnovers than they had forced on the season. Miami was number 10 nationally, 11, excuse me.
Yeah.
Or sorry, tied for 8th. They were +11.
Yep.
So, hey, again, you go up against a good opponent, your flaws that get exposed, and A&M lost the turnover battle 3-1, lost the game by 7 points. Pretty simple equation there.
Yep.
So yeah, let's move on to the next round. So here's just a look at the bracket. This is obviously, these were our picks. So of course I had A&M not only beating Miami but beating Ohio State because I'm a massive homer. And that will not happen. But, you got your matchups here with Oregon, Texas Tech, Alabama, Indiana, Ole Miss, Georgia, and Miami and Ohio State. I'm going to start real quick because it parlays or segues well with what I was just going to say. So Alabama, Indiana. The Hoosiers opened at 7, favored by 7. I think it's down to 6.5, but still, again, just can we take a moment and pause and say how amazing is this that in the year of our Lord 2025, Indiana is ranked number 1, playing number 9 Alabama and favored by a touchdown.
Yeah.
So what I'm looking for in this game is, can Alabama, basically, this is how insane to say, but stand toe-to-toe with Indiana, because on that turnover point, Indiana does not beat themselves. You have to take it to them. They are second in the country in turnover margin at +17. They've only turned the ball over 8 times, and they have forced 25. Now, Alabama's pretty good themselves. They're +8 on the year in turnover margin, 23rd nationally. So it's not like Alabama turns the ball over a lot, but I just bring that up to emphasize the point of this is not, it's not your mother's Indiana. You are going to have to beat them straight up. They won't beat themselves. We saw it against Ohio State, right? Ohio State, for everybody's money going into that game, was the best team in the country, and Indiana stood toe-to-toe with them and ended up beating them. And, thanks to a missed field goal by Ohio State. But, hey, it's like you control what you can control. You don't have any control over Ohio State making or missing a kick. They miss the kick. Indiana takes advantage. And then I think, the other thing about this game that is interesting is the quarterback matchup. For my money, these are probably the 2 best quarterbacks out there. Saying that Ohio State's had a heck of a year too. I mean, you could split hairs, but these 2 guys, at least in terms of NFL stuff too, what they've shown, both these guys, I think, have a future there and can make big time throws.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what it comes down to me is like, hey, who doesn't make a mistake and turn the ball over, and then which quarterback makes the big time throws when they're needed, because that's exactly what Mendoza did when they beat Oregon. Coming off that pick 6, turns right around, leads them down, and then similarly against Ohio State, when they needed it, he made some big time throws downfield. But what are you looking for in this game?
Yeah, I'm really interested watching Indiana and their corners on the outside, their safeties against the Bama receivers, because I remember watching, I didn't watch a ton of Indiana football this year, just kind of watch them from afar, watch some of the highlights, like they just keep winning. They just keep winning, right? Before I say this too, the team that most looks like a Nick Saban team is Indiana. Like Kurt Signetti from the Saban tree, like you said, Indiana does not beat themselves. Like you were going to have to rip this thing, from the jaws in order to get a victory. And that is what it used to be like playing Alabama when Nick Saban was in charge. So really just interesting to see that dichotomy that now Indiana is the one playing Nick Saban football with Kurt Signetti off that tree. And not that Alabama's bad, but they just play, a bit of a different style of football. And sometimes they can beat themselves, as they have done, before this season, as we've seen, and as they did last season at times as well. So but the matchup I'm interested in, I'm just trying to look up the stats again because I couldn't remember. And I remember Ohio State moved the ball on them. They had 322 yards of total offense. They couldn't run the ball. That was interesting. So I'm interested to see if Alabama has any chance to run the ball in this game. They can't run the ball, right? Ohio State couldn't run the ball on this Indiana defense. So Indiana is going to just load it up and just say, hey, good luck. I don't think you can run the ball against us at all. And they play a lot of press coverage, a lot of man coverage on the outside for Indiana. And they do a pretty good job of that too. And so I'm interested to see how much separation these Alabama receivers can get. Alabama's got great receivers and they've been playing pretty well. Jeremy Bernard had one of the best catches we've seen all year that made up for some of the drops that he's had recently in that game against Oklahoma, where he went up over the corner's head and just picked it up like he was Julio Jones or something. So we know about Ryan Williams. He's had his issues this year, but he's a very talented guy. Jeremy Bernard. You've got multiple receivers. Isaiah Horton right on the outside for Alabama. But Indiana, very salty on defense. And with the fact that that you're not going to be able to run the ball much on Indiana, like how much space and separation are these wide receivers going to be able to get? I expect a fairly low-scoring game in this one as well. I think it's going to be in the 20s probably, if I had to guess, like a 27-24 kind of game. But that's the matchup I'm really keyed in on watching outside of the quarterback duel.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I would expect a low-scoring affair here, but I think it should be a good game. I mean, my initial gut is I like Indiana to win, but I would pick Bama to cover. I'm not sure that Indiana can get that far ahead. I think Alabama's defense is very good, and I think this will be a back and forth defensive battle. Speaking of defensive battles, we can carry this over into Miami and Ohio State. The Buckeyes open as 10-point favorites. Again, huge homer pick by me to have the Aggies beating Ohio State in my bracket in the second round. Obviously, Miami is now there. After seeing that game, I struggle to see, and I would say the same about A&M, had they somehow pulled out that win. I struggle to see how either one of these teams can hang with Ohio State. The Miami defensive line is nasty. I think they can give Ohio State some trouble, and we saw when Indiana did that and was able to get pressure on Sayin, it made him uncomfortable. But I don't think Miami can score in this game. Ohio State's defense is better than A&M's, and that was not a good offensive performance for Miami, despite the fact that they got the win. I struggle to see where Miami's going to find points in this one. I do think their defense will be able to hang tough with Ohio State, but I don't think they can hang quite tough enough for, 4 quarters. Against the spread, 10's a lot. I might, kind of lean Miami there, but definitely straight up, I'm struggling to find a way where Miami could get this done.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, going back to the A&M game for just a second, thinking about that Miami offensive performance. I mean, Miami was having to pull out trick plays in the first half because, they did it on a couple of occasions. They got Carson Beck out wide. Like, they had nothing going on offense. I looked up at the scoreboard. You probably know the stats better than I do, but I looked up at the ribbon board early in the second half, and they had the QB stats. They had flashed the QB stats up there. Carson Beck had nine yards passing in the first half. Like, they could get nothing going through the air. They really couldn't get much going on the ground in the first half. And like I said, it kind of opened up a little more in the second half, which is why they ended up with 175 rushing yards. But, overall, it was and Miami, by the way, they had a short field on multiple occasions in that game because of Marcel turnovers, bad punts, good punt return. I mean, multiple short fields where you are either in A&M territory to start the drive or right on the cusp of A&M territory to start the drive. And they couldn't manufacture points to save their life. And so you're going up against, like you said, an Ohio State defense that is better than A&M's defense. Where are you going to be able to find points in this game? I'm with you on that. I also just think, man, Jeremiah Smith is a matchup problem for anybody. He's the best wide receiver in college football. The guy is unbelievable. It's going to be a first-round pick. He's going to be a NFL stalwart star wide receiver for a long time. I mean, I just was looking up the stats, had like 144 yards receiving, as well as Indiana played on defense against Ohio State and pressing up and doing pretty well, on the outside. 144 yards, 8 receptions against that Indiana defense, which is also salty. So A&M has good receivers, Casey Concepcion, Mario Craver. Craver had a great catch early in that game as well for a 60-something yard, reception. But none of those guys that A&M has is Jeremiah Smith. And Jeremiah Smith presents so many problems for opponents. And I think Miami's going to have trouble, covering him most of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Carnell Tate too, on the other side, if you want to blanket Jeremiah Smith, then, and we saw that last year in the playoffs, right? Some of those teams, the further the playoffs went on, were really dedicating resources to Jeremiah Smith, and Carnell Tate was just all over. I mean, he murdered Texas because Texas was all over Jeremiah Smith, and Carnell Tate was the answer. So, yeah, that should be a good game. We got 2 more, so we'll go to the all SEC one here with Ole Miss Georgia rematch. Georgia won the first one, I think 41-34 in Athens. Georgia opens up as a touchdown favorite here. I'll let you lead us off. What are your thoughts on this one?
I think this is where everything for Ole Miss catches up to them, because Georgia, in my mind, I mean, we talked about this. We can flash our brackets again if we want, but in our college football playoff predictions given them in the last show, we both picked Georgia to win the national title. I think they were my preseason pick to win the national title. I can't remember who you picked, but I know they were in your Final Four at the very least, right? So we both are very high on Georgia. I'm even higher now on Georgia than I was in the preseason. Like, I think they're really coming into form now. Gunnar Stockton is playing very well, playing at a very high clip. And then you go to the defense, which the defense has been what folks have been kind of, oh, this isn't the Kirby Smart defenses of old. They're good. They're really good, but they're not, that great. Well, here's a couple stats. So in the last 3 Power 5 games that Georgia has played, they have given up 10 points to Texas, 9 points to Georgia Tech, and 7 points to Alabama. In those games, they're giving up just 236 yards per game. So this Georgia defense is rounding into form. They are very good. They've had weeks to prepare. They knew likely that their opponent was going to be Ole Miss. Ole Miss has all this turmoil that's been happening. We all know what's been going on with them and Lane Kiffin and the back and forth and everything. I don't foresee this one going as it did last time. The last game, right? Literally, it came down to a single defensive stop from Georgia is how they won this game, because Ole Miss couldn't stop Georgia and Georgia couldn't stop Ole Miss except for once. So I don't see this game going in the same way that it did earlier in the season. I think Georgia is a much better team right now than they were at that point in the season. And I think Ole Miss, while they just did what they did to Tulane, which was impressive, 41-10, great, the step up in competition from Tulane to Georgia is, night and day. So Ole Miss has a ton of weapons. Trinidad Chambliss is playing very well. I get all that. I think Ole Miss is able to keep this one close, but I think Georgia covers this game. I think Georgia is the team of destiny. I think they're going to be your national champion. And so I just really like where this Georgia defense is at. I don't think that Ole Miss, with all the turmoil that's been going on, is going to be able to beat Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I don't have a whole lot to add there. I think the way these two teams stand right now, I think Georgia is the better team, and assuming they play their game, should win this one. I also just think like Pete Golding brought it up in the post game, and then again, I think in his press conference today of like, what are you looking forward to playing to Georgia? And he's like, nothing right now.
I'm not.
They asked, something about I don't remember what the question was, but he's like, well, I hope we can force him to punt this go around. And that's kind of what worries me is just, I think Mike Bobo's doing a great job. I think he'll be in his bag in this game. And, same thing I'm about to say for Texas Tech is like, they knew they were playing Ole Miss. They're not prepping for Tulane. And I don't know how much resources Tulane garnered from Ole Miss this week. They probably were prepping for Georgia as well. But I do think there's at least a little bit of a dynamic there of, Georgia has known since the bracket came out that they'd be playing Ole Miss. And they've already seen them. They're going to have a good plan. Similarly, Ole Miss will have a good plan because they've already seen Georgia, and so they know, where their shortcomings were and how to mask them. But yeah, at the end of the day, I just think Georgia's the better team at the moment. So I would definitely roll with the dogs there. So our last game, Texas Tech and Oregon. It's like we got the numbers mixed up there on our graphic, but the spread is correct. Oregon is favored by 1.5. And this one, I should have been mentioning all this. These are all the old traditional bowls. So this one's the Orange Bowl. Alabama and Indiana is the Rose Bowl. Sugar Bowl in New Orleans is Ole Miss, Georgia, and then the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, Miami, and Ohio State. So this is the Orange Bowl. I'm kind of going to say the same thing I just said. I sort of like Texas Tech in this matchup because they have known that they are playing Oregon. And again, I'm sure Oregon was prepping for Tech as well, knowing that JMU would likely not pose that big of a threat. But I don't know, man. Texas Tech coming off that big win against BYU. I think Oregon, especially offensively, will present challenges that Texas Tech has not seen.
Mm-hmm.
And they will be stretched in ways, that they haven't had to stretch so far this year, especially in the secondary, especially if Oregon can get somebody like Evan Stewart back, which it sounds like he will. So I think Dante Moore, could throw them to a win here. But I think that Texas Tech front seven will stop the run. I think they will put it all on Dante Moore. And so I kind of like the Red Raiders to sneak this one out. What do you think?
I do too. Guns up, baby. Because I picked Texas Tech to win this game.
I did not. So this is me going against my own prediction here.
Okay. All right. Changing it up now.
Yeah. I'm switching my bracket as I go.
Yeah. Right.
That'd be 100% by the end of it.
That's right. So that's what I'm fascinated by. You just alluded to it, is the Texas Tech defense versus this Oregon offense. And also, like, for Texas Tech, this is at least from the national perspective, right? Folks who aren't Big 12 fans will defend the Big 12, till they're blue in the face about this is big boy football, and we play good football here in the Big 12. And, Big 10 and SEC fans will all clap back and say, no, you don't. Let's see what you got, come play us and we'll see what happens. And so now you get your chance, right? This is a Big 10 power. Still crazy to say that Oregon is a Big 10 power to me.
Yeah.
Pac-12, but yeah, Big 10 power in Oregon. And they are for sure. I mean, Dan Lanning's a hell of a coach. Dante Moore been playing at a very high level. They've got a good defense. But Texas Tech, their calling card this year is defense. They got Jacob Rodriguez. They're salty on defense. And I mean, what did they hold BYU to in the Big 12 championship game?
I don't know, 6,
10?
I think. Yeah.
7, 10, something. I mean, like nothing. And BYU's got a good offense. So that Texas Tech defense is impressive. So Ohio State, we were talking about their defense earlier. That's one of the best defenses in the country. They're very, very good. In the matchup against Oregon, they were able to hold Oregon to just 21 points. Oregon is a top 10 scoring offense in the country. So is Texas Tech, I don't think they're on Ohio State's level, but are they good enough on defense to be able to hold Oregon to something, a 24 to a 27. Like you have to hold Oregon to that amount of points if you're Texas Tech, because I think, Texas Tech has a good offense as well, but they're not the guns up of old. This is not Mike Leach's Texas Tech. You're not scoring 44 points and trying to win 44-41, right? Like this team is going to score somewhere between like 24 and 34 points in a game like this. So you need to hold Oregon to that as well. And so I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. I think Oregon has a very good offense, but I'm just riding with the Red Raiders. They had time to prepare for them. Like you said, this defense is really dadgum good. And I think part of me is just pulling for them, man. I would love to see Jacob Rodriguez and Joey McGuire and Texas Tech fans, excited and getting a big win against the Oregon Ducks.
Yeah. And one more point on this one, since we've been talking about it a lot. Texas Tech tied with Indiana, number 2 in the country in turnover margin, plus 17. Oregon is 32nd at plus 6. So Texas Tech takes care of the football. They turn people over. Oregon, decent at it, but not nearly. I mean, 6-17 is a wide margin.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that, plays out. Anyway, I just brought it up. And Dante Moore threw 2 picks against James Madison. So something to look out for, especially if he's under pressure from that front 7 of the Red Raiders. So that's the college football playoff. Round 2 games. We'll be back. I don't know when we'll be back exactly. We'll figure that out, but we'll be back definitely before the semis to talk through those and break down the quarterfinal matchups that we've got coming up on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So let's close out the show here as my dogs start barking in the background.
Time to go, Dad.
Yep, we've got our Muschamp Coach of the Week. So you put this one together. I got it uploaded down there, but I'll let you intro it.
Yes. So got over 250 of you guys watching us right now. So we appreciate every single one of you watching us right now. That's a great number, man, for Christmas week. So appreciate you guys wanting to talk some ball. There's been a lot to talk about tonight. But if you're new to Biscuits and SEC, if you don't watch us often, Muschamp Coach of the Week. We love Coach Muschamp. This is an ode to him. I think we may have to change. Yeah, we may have to change the name now, considering he's the Texas defensive coordinator, at which, like, Coach Muschamp, we love you, man, but you just stake to the heart of Biscuits and SEC.
After all we've done for you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just he really turned code on us. So we've been workshopping some new names with our friend Mike Huseman of SEC After Dark and of Off Season After Dark. So we may have to come up with a new name for the Muschamp Coach of the Week. But as of now, and even still, everything we say about Coach Muschamp is true, and that it personifies what it means to be a college football coach and the passion of college football, punching whiteboards, blood running down his face, and a heck of a defensive coach as well. So we like to give this award every week to the coach that best exemplifies that passion for the game of college football. This is a second-time winner this week, and there was plenty we could have gone off with the playoffs and everything going on, but I thought that this guy, Biff Poggi, got it. He got it earlier this season when he filled in for Sharon Moore, who was suspended for 2 games or whatever it was. And he got a win early in the season. And the post-game press conference was hilarious, or the post-game interview. And he said something like, they were like, what are you going to do to enjoy this one? He's like, well, I'm going to go home and eat a bunch of ice cream and may have a heart attack and go to the hospital or something like that. And so that clip is worth finding. Just go search it on Twitter. You'll find it in a minute. But Biff Poggi is your Muschamp Coach of the Week this week because he was interviewing to be the potential Michigan head coach. And I think he's gone through a couple interviews. He has a real chance to get this job. Biff Poggi comes from a background. He's a self-made man, hedge fund guy, made a ton of money doing that, and then just loved football, loved coaching, got into high school football, coached there. Then he coached at Charlotte. But I think he's a Michigan grad, if I'm not mistaken. So he's a Michigan man, and he was giving the press conference before their game. They got the Cheez-It Bowl coming up against Texas, and so they were asking him about the Michigan job, and he had a couple pretty good quotes. So I put these together. Biff Poggi, your must-champ coach of the week.
Everything that happens in this building has to be reevaluated, quite frankly, because it is not up to standard. The staff has to be reevaluated, and I mean the coaches, I mean the analysts, I mean everybody in the building except Dave, but it has to be evaluated. Our strength and conditioning, our nutrition, our medical, everything, because obviously it has been 5 years of, let's just call it what it is, a malfunctioning organization where there's something every year. And I know that, what the athletic director has made very clear, he doesn't want any more of that. One of the things I want to fix before I go smoke myself to death with cigars. It's one of the things I want to fix. I want to fix this program. And it's with every coaching change. Any new coach is going to want to examine everything in the building. And, we sometimes a fresh look at things is always helpful. And I think in any organization, if you're not basically self-scouting, in business, you need to do it every quarter because you report results. And if you're not doing it on a continuing basis, you're getting worse. Somebody is passing you.
So that's Biff Poggi. I thought that just that whole thing he gave basically was a very good quote about how to run an organization and kind of the things that need to be done. This organization has been in turmoil for 5 years. It's been, it's just a problem in Michigan. By the way, I was wrong. I just looked this up to make sure. He played football at the University of Pittsburgh and then graduated from Duke University. So not necessarily a Michigan man, but obviously he's coached there for a while on a couple different stints, I believe.
Multiple stints.
So he loves Michigan. He's been around the block. He knows that school like the back of his hand. So but that quote about him, one of the things I do before I smoke myself to death with cigars is to fix the University of Michigan football. So Biff Poggi, your must-champ coach of the week. That guy is just a quote machine. We will get him potentially the final certificate and the final trophy to him in the mail within the next 5 years, and I'm sure it will be prominently displayed.
It will, and he could win it every week. I mean, he doesn't do it anymore because Michigan probably wouldn't allow it. But when he was the head coach of Charlotte, he was just coaching in the cutoff T-shirt. So yeah, he's just rocking like a T-shirt with Charlotte Miners on it. He's just cut the sleeves off. So he's a legend.
Total football guy. Just one last thing on it. If you have not seen the documentary about, I think it's Gilmer School, or where was he at?
Gilman.
He was at Gilman in Baltimore. That's where he got back into coaching. And
big prep school.
Yeah. And so there's a documentary about Biff Poggi coaching in Baltimore and how he kind of revitalized that program, what he did. I think it's like 8 or something episodes. So it's well worth a watch. I believe it's on HBO. So if you haven't seen that, go check that documentary out.
Absolutely. Well, we will close it out with this. Our biscuit of the week. Again, if you're new around here, we do a biscuit of the week every week. We are Biscuits and SEC. We love biscuits. We love food and Southern culture. So we like to give a shout out each week to a specific biscuit. If you'd like to be featured, send us one. Rick, I think we got one in the hopper for you, so we'll have to get back to that. Our friend Rick Wilmarth, a.k.a. Captain Biscuit, sends us plenty of biscuits to feature on the show, and we're happy to do it. But if you would like to be featured, just DM us all over social media or email us, contact@biscuitsandsec.com. We'll be sure to feature you. This week, though, is another homegrown feature. So this, I believe, is my final installment from my trip down to Seaside on my honeymoon, where I ate biscuits every single morning. But I think this is the last one I have. So the picture you see on the left there is actually my biscuit. So that is a egg, cheese, and andouille sausage biscuit from Scratch Biscuit Kitchen down in Seaside. The top right picture is just another item on their menu. Looks like biscuits and gravy with a fried chicken piece on there. But This place was very good. I had never had an andouille sausage biscuit before, and it's pretty good. As you can see, it's basically, it's a sausage link. They just split it in half and threw it on there. They make obviously the biscuits from scratch. They're square biscuits, and it was quite good. So if you're in the area, again, I've got plenty of biscuit recommendations for you if you are down 30A way at any point. Just check out this show or any of our ones of the last month, and there's been quite a few biscuits from that area featured. So that is our biscuit of the week. Shout out to Scratch Biscuit Kitchen.
Yeah, I love the look of that biscuit right there. Those people look like they know what they're doing. It's got like the square. It's very well, it looks like they get a big batch that comes out. They just cut them out in the squares. Got a lot of good fluff there. Andouille sausages, man, that place looks awesome. My question for you is, I with the amount of biscuits we featured, it looks like you did one in the morning, one at lunch, and one in the evening. But which one of the ones that we have featured and the ones that you had in Seaside when you were on your honeymoon, what was the best biscuit that you had down there?
Yeah, the best one came, I think it was the first one I featured, from Black Bear Bread Company, and it was just a sausage, egg, and cheese biscuit, but it was outstanding and enormous. That was my favorite one. I would recommend going there. That one was probably number 2, and the one last week was probably number 3. The Fonville Press spicy chicken biscuit, probably 3. Scratch Kitchen andouille sausage, number 2, and then Black Bear Bread Co. sausage, egg, and cheese, number 1. I will say, though, to give another shout out to Scratch, maybe not necessarily Scratch, but their patrons. We walked in. It's one of those places you order at the counter, sit down with a number. So we walk in, get our number, sit down, and there's a guy sitting a couple tables down from me in a Vandy two-turn hat. And he's probably retired. And he was a regular there. He knew the name of the lady behind the register, and some guy, he was about to leave. So he's got his Vandy two-turn hat on. And he's walking out, and some guy comes walking in that he knows. So he probably lives down there, and he comes back in and sits down, and he's talking Vandy football with this guy.
Yeah, let's go.
He's talking all about Diego Pavia and Vandy football. So it's like, man, this is my kind of place.
I'm sure he watches Biscuits and SEC. Did you let him know? Hey, man.
No, I didn't.
The newsletter.
Oh, come on. The newsletter. I should have some guerrilla marketing.
That's
on
right,
the ground.
man. Missed opportunity. That's all right. Well, you said the one that was the best was just the classic sausage, egg, and cheese, man. So, hey, Keep it simple, stupid. Classic sausage, egg, and cheese, bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit, man. It's hard to beat.
It is. Well, that will do it for us tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. We got, over 260 people tuning in on the week of Christmas on a off night. We're normally Wednesdays at 7 Eastern. So mixing it up, giving you some football on a Monday. We appreciate all y'all tuning in. Sign up for the newsletter. We're producing here, double clicking. Sign up for the newsletter if you haven't. We'll keep you up to date with all the goings on in the SEC. And we'll be back. We'll have to figure out our programming over the rest of the holidays, but we'll be back sometime before the at least semifinal games. So we won't see you before Christmas. Have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays. We appreciate all y'all tuning in, and just hope you have a great Christmas.
One more thing before we go, just another programming note. Typically, as most folks know, we do SEC After Dark on Thursdays. That's going to be Christmas Day this year, so I don't think we're going to have an SEC After Dark on Thursday. But we are talking about it. We're figuring it out. It's looking like most likely SEC After Dark, we will have a show either on Monday or Tuesday of next week. So just check our social media channels. As you guys can see here, After Dark Network, we got a ton of great shows that you can watch. SEC After Dark on Thursdays. Off-season After Dark, our friend Mike Huseman does a great job on Tuesdays. Is typically when his show comes out. He does great job covering SEC football, ACC football, G5, all of it. So be sure to check his show out, Bama After Dark with Jake Thomas, typically on Tuesdays. And then the Regular Guys pod, you guys can check that one out as well. A bit of a disparate schedule there, but just check their social media for their show. But just wanted to mention that no show this week on Thursday for SEC After Dark. And we should be back early next week. And then, like Hammer said, for Biscuits and SEC, we'll figure out a show next week before we get to the semifinals to make sure we talk about those games. So look forward to that. Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy holidays. Thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yep. Appreciate y'all.